Let's go from here. So today we're going to be going over bulk operations in Zeit. So as with always, just some general housekeeping. There'll be a number of sections in this presentation, and if you have any questions, please just put them in the chat at any time as we go through. And we will come to all of the questions towards the end. This is being recorded, and we'll put it up as within your learning materials towards the end of this series. And yes, those are the general housekeeping rules. Bulk operations is a part of Zeit which is really, really important. It's also a little, it's very easy to do and user-friendly in a way, but it's also something which sometimes requires a bit of fiddliness. So you might be going something where we'd recommend definitely using the guidance as you go through and really treating it as a trial and error, but obviously being careful as well, because bulk operations, as we'll see in the slides, it's usually important to ensure that you don't change anything that you didn't want to change, and having a backup of your previous data in case you make small mistakes as you go through. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so the learning objectives we have for today, we're going to understand what bulk data management is and how it can be useful for our data management. We're going to learn practically how to download, complete, and update the correct bulk templates for required operations, how to troubleshoot errors for updates, and how to bulk manage sites, cases, contacts, and more. So this is essentially structure of the lesson. There'll be overview at the start, there'll be history and troubleshooting, and then as you see, the 3rd to 7 chapters are just going to be on the different types of bulk operations that you can do on Zeit. So we'll start with an overview. So firstly, why do bulk data management? So this can really support you when you want to do large scale actions. So we've already gone through case management on the Zeit web platform. So it's quite easy, as you've seen, to edit one site or one submission, or even up to 10, for example, if you have to do those edits. So you just go through, you click the small pencil icon on the web platform, and it's very easy and manageable to just change that. And that is what's recommended when you have a small number of changes to make. When you want to edit huge amounts of records, and there could be a number of reasons within your project why that might need to happen. You might realize that someone's made a mistake in data collection, the whole team has made a mistake, you might need to backdate something, then you'll need to come to the point where you start using bulk data management. Manual work in these kinds of instances is both slow and risky for making mistakes. And usually you'll have all the correct data on an Excel sheet anyway, so it would be much easier to just put those into a bulk operation. So essentially, it's a tool for making large-scale changes across lots of different dimensions, very simply and very efficiently. Okay, so what can bulk operations help you with? So using a template, and templates will differ across whatever operation that you want to do. You can change sites and regions, you can import sites and regions, and you can also edit sites and regions. You can change form submissions. Also, you can understand that as case submissions, so you can import forms into Zeit, and you can also edit existing cases or forms in Zeit. For bulk review submissions, you can also, this was one of the lessons we went through previously, the review panel on the side, which essentially looks at the status. So is the case in progress, closed, open, or responded, or flagged? Also the comments, the reasons, and whatever custom fields you have. So those can also be edited, and this can really help you in workflows. One note is that you can't currently bulk delete objects or cases because of the risks associated with this, but you can request to do that to the Site Manager support portal. So if you have a request to bulk delete, you can send that into the support portal, and the team will support you in that. Okay, so this again is parts that you can do. So we'll just go through this part. It goes in a bit more detail. So you can add edit sites and site information. You can also change the region as well as the geometry, the location points, or the polygon points, depending on whether it's region or site. You can import data into COBOL forms, review the status, edit case data, and you can also add or edit contact and beneficiary data. So a four-step process to bulk operations, and this will work across all types of bulk operations. So first, you'll just navigate to project settings and then go to bulk upload and update. Then you want to download the correct template by what you want to do. So if you want to bulk edit the sites, you'd go to the site template. Then you will upload the completed template, which shows what your changes are or what you want to upload. And then you will check by looking at the history page. So that's a review, and check a sample to verify that your bulk upload or bulk edit has gone as you intended it to go. Okay, we're just going to stop here for questions. That was just the introduction part. Any questions at this stage?
No questions.
Brilliant. So in this section, we're going to look at history and troubleshooting. We'll tackle this part first because the history and troubleshooting part remains consistent across all types of bulk actions. So the history page, which we'll come to, I'll show you in a second, that shows your most recent bulk change operations, and it also allows you to download validation reports with the following actions. So the validation reports, when you download them, they're just Excel data sets. They will tell you whether the action was completed, which actions were recently run, and whether any issues occurred during the uploads. So this is just to show you the result of the bulk action. So it can either show you a success, so that would be the whole operation being successful. It will show you partial success, some rows uploaded and some failed, and you can identify which rows uploaded and which fails from the report that it provides. Or it says the operation completely failed. So all rows failed and no new upload or change happened. So to diagnose those errors, essentially you just click on the file name, you download the template, and then you read the newly created column remarks, which explains the reason for row failure. So it might say that it can't identify the primary key that you put in, or it might say that the field name is incorrect. And we'll come on to what some of those look like. Right now, I'm just going to show you what that history tab looks like, and the different the successes, partial successes, or failures that you might see. So you go into your project page, you'll look into settings, and in the bulk upload and update section, you'll see that right at the bottom you have history. So you'll click on history. This essentially, as I said, shows all of your previous actions. So you'll see you have a number of actions here, and you can just see over here whether it's a success, failed, or partial success. So you have all of them over here. So if you, let's say you just take this one, which is a partial success, you'll then see what you intended to do. So this is essentially the data set that I would have uploaded or you would have uploaded for the bulk change operation. And these are all of the columns that existed in that existing template, in the initial one that you put in. And then this final column over here just tells you what's been done. So this shows that everything is done, but one line will show failure. So here it says location data is required. So it's quite specific in pinpointing the error. So that can be a really useful tool for you to use for bulk change operations. Okay, so common issues and best practices. in terms of hanging processes, if there's no success or failure reports after 1 hour, so that this can happen sometimes, so it's often a technical issue or perhaps a template error. So please submit a ticket via the support portal and someone will look at that as soon as possible. Zeit will read templates essentially like Open Data Kit, and therefore it's really important to use identifiers correctly, the correct field names, and the choice names as in the Open Data Kit. We'll come onto that in a bit more detail in exactly how you should input those fields. Okay, so Zeit essentially reads and stores data similar to Open Data Kit. So it uses the names instead of the labels. So it's really important when you're doing imports and edits, you're providing decoding names. So that's when you're referencing survey fields. So in the survey tabs of your COBOL form, or also in the choices tab. In both of those tabs, you'll have a label and you'll have the name. When you're doing any kind of bulk operation, you really need to ensure that you're using the names and not the labels. If you use the labels, Zeit won't recognize it and it won't read it and it will fail the bulk change. So you need to ensure that you address field references exactly as provided in the templates and in the ODK forms. And you'll need to ensure that all fields are in their associated group with a forward slash with a backward slash to denote the difference between the group and the field. Sometimes you'll have fields that aren't in any group. So if they're not in any group, then you can just use the field directly. If they are in a group, you need to denote the group and then the field. And you'll need to ensure that you're referencing all objects and data with correct primary keys. So you can think about that if you want to edit a case or existing case in Zeit, then you'll need to use the correct primary key for that case, which is the case ID. Okay, so just again, if there's any problems, really important that this sometimes does happen, and just to submit a ticket via the support portal. Okay, so the some best practices here. So the first best practice, and this one is really important, is to review the guidance as you're going through the bulk change operations. So there are a lot of bulk change operations, and it's very easy to forget some details. I use bulk change operations quite a lot, and I always forget some details sometimes. And so it's really important to just use the guidance as you're going through. So in Zeit, you can use the guidance by clicking on the small question mark button on the bottom right of the screen. And you just navigate to bulk operations, and it's very easy. It provides very easy guidance for how to do the bulk operations step by step. The second best practice is to always ensure that you back up your data. So I showed you the history tab, and that can be very useful, but it will only show the recent history. So you should always back up your data. So this means essentially the best practice I would suggest is to create a data set or report of what existed before, and then the bulk operation as well, in a separate folder in your program folders. I usually do that just by date. So I have a folder called bulk change operations, and I put the date that I made the change, and I put the previous version as well as the changed version there, so that if I ever have a point where I need to understand what the previous data was, you can always go back. Another important best practice is to start with a test. So if you're changing, let's say 200 cases, it can be really useful to, and is highly recommended to edit, let's say 10 rows or something like that using the form first. You can check first using the history tab to see if it's been a success, and then also just by navigating to the cases themselves. Let's say you were editing sites, you'd navigate to the sites in Zeit, and you just want to check whether, okay, have those changes been made? Yes. Is it exactly where I want them to be made? Yes. Then I can then go and do the larger bulk operation. Great. Okay, so chapter 3, we're now going to be looking at the bulk operations for sites. So what can you do with bulk operations on sites? Here, you can create or update a number of sites at the same time. You can update a number of site profiles also at the same time. You can restructure sites in or vice versa. So move sites under different regions. Okay, so there's two ways to conduct bulk site operations. If you already have a project with sites, you can download the site list, then download the template. If you're creating your site list from scratch, you can just download the template. The download will appear as always in the notifications column, and if the template looks blank, then the columns might be hidden. So this is something to know actually for all of the bulk operations. Sometimes you might see Excel sheets, templates with hidden columns, so just be sure to unhide those columns. You can also upload the existing site list as a template. You'll just need to delete the metadata columns, which are the final three columns. So the existing site list follows the template structure. So now we're just going to go through what the template looks like. Each row essentially is each site or subsite. So that's each data point which can be changed. The site ID will be the first column, but that's the primary key and the identifier used to match the rows in site. So the other columns in the template are essentially the same as those in site information. So if you add custom site information fields, as we've seen how to do before, you'll create new fields in the site template, which can then be edited or uploaded. So creating and editing sites, those are both of the processes that you can do using this template. If you want to create a new site, you essentially will add a new site identifier and you'll fill in details. So as long as you add in a new site ID, and you should follow the same convention that you've been using, you'll create new sites. You can also edit sites, but to do that, you'll use the existing identifier and just update the relevant fields. So you only need to include the columns that you want to edit. If you overwrite, if you essentially turn a cell which has a value into a blank or a null, you will essentially remove the data associated to that field. So be careful when you do that. And in terms of site type, just a reminder to ensure that you use the name and not the label for the site type. So in terms of some other aspects you can do here, assigning regions, that's something which can be very important. This will, there'll be a column for the region ID. You'll need to put in the region ID and the site will automatically be placed into that region. To create a subsite, there'll also be a field, a column called the parent identifier field, and this will essentially nest a site into another site. So current limitations that we have in the sites bulk action is you can't bulk delete sites. So this is for the safety of your projects. And you also can't bulk change site IDs. This might be something that you'll need to do at some point. So if you need to do either of these things, then you'll need to request it through the support portal. Okay, so now we'll just move to a short demonstration on how you might bulk edit sites. So here we will look at adding a new site, also editing existing sites and moving sites to new regions. Okay, so as always, you'll go into your project page and then you'll go into the settings. You'll go into bulk upload and update. And this time you're going to go into sites. So here you see that you can either download the sites or you can download the template over here. So my project has existing sites, so I will need to download the sites. And we'll just get a notification when that's come through. So just now the bulk site export has downloaded. So we'll just open that. And we will see that we have the entire site list for this project that we have working here. So I'm just going to download this as a Excel file. I find it a bit easier to navigate that way. Okay, so here essentially we have the existing sites that we have in the project. This is just a test project that we're working with here. So the first thing that I want to do, let's say, is I want to add a new site. So here I'm going to use the same conventions, and I'm going to add a new site, and I'm going to code it with the next logical identifier. We're going to call it Jaipur, and we're going to call it a test site. So here I'm just going to leave these parts blank. The geometry is usually mandatory, so I'm just going to, let's say for this version, take the existing geometry that we have. I am going to put it also within the same region. So you can see that this is the region identifier, which places these sites in the first level region, which is India, and the second level region, which is Jaipur. So I'm going to put this down here. This is the identifier for the site type. So here I know that this new site is run by active. So I'm going to put that over there, and I'm going to say that this site is inactive. Okay, so as I said before in the slides, in order for it to match the template, we just need to remove these metadata fields. So I'm also going to remove this. So this would be creating a new site, just essentially creating a row. You wouldn't have to do it in order. You could also put it in the bottom of the Excel. If I want to edit this site, so let's say I want to change the name. I want to change this to, let's just say, new name. So we'll leave all the other information the same. And let's say, for example, we also have here another column, which we created a custom column when we were creating the relevant site columns. And we have population IDPs present. So let's say for this site, we have 50, and for this, we have 100. So we can add those fields in as well. So I'm going to save this. These are the changes that I want to make. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to upload the template which I've created. And since it's a pretty large file, it might take a short time to conduct the bulk change. Okay, so you then see the icon, which tells you what happened in the operation. So you see that we have all of the rows successfully uploaded and 0 items failed. So we know that it's been a successful operation. So we can check in the history, but we don't need to download the data file itself. We can check now to see if the sites that we wanted to change have changed. I believe it was the site of INDJ. Okay, exactly. So we have, this was the new site that we created, 05, and we can just have a look at that site and see that it is indeed inactive, as we said on the template. The type is active, and we can also see that it's got the IDPs present over here. We can also see as we go through here that we have the existing one, which was 04, and that's been changed as new name, right? And we also changed the IDPs present as 50. So that's an example of a bulk upload of a site, as well as a bulk edit of some kind of site. So for regions, we'll go over this section quite briefly. So the regions essentially works very similarly to site. You essentially need to download the template, then either use the existing primary keys to edit the existing region information, or use new primary keys essentially to create new regions. So here you should always start from the region template, and you should download the region list just as we downloaded the site list before for guidance. It's essentially the same structure for doing regions as it is for sites. So the region is a much smaller template, essentially, because you have a lot of custom fields attached to sites, a lot of different fields. With regions, you won't need that many fields. So essentially, you have the identifier, the primary key, you have the name of the region, you have the parent identifier, as we saw with the example I gave previously. So that was IND for India, and the place Jaipur was nested within IND. The geometry will be in well-known text format, and for a region, it should essentially be a polygon and not a point. So here's an example of that, actually. So we have the identifier, and here the identifier will be IND. The name might be IND, or it might actually be India. That would probably make more sense. Parent identifier has none in this top row. And for this one, we didn't include the polygon. But let's go down to the nested region. So you have these. You have the primary key, the identifier. You then have the name, and you have the parent identifier. So this should be identical to this one. And you have the polygon field. Then you might also have a third level region over here. So you can see that the parent identifier here for the final row exists under Tamil Nadu. And that would therefore be a third level region within site. So if you want to make bulk uploads to this, you would essentially download the template, and you'd put in fields that look similar to this, and that will allow you to make changes or create new regions. So any questions on the region section?
No questions.
Okay, so bulk operations. Now we're moving into editing submissions. So bulk edit, this is probably the one which I would say is probably used the most. This will allow you to change values across multiple submissions. So you can include up to 30,000 question updates per template submitted. Probably not recommended to include all that many in one go. This can function across a number of different cases or submissions. And essentially, the reason for this existing is if there's been multiple data entry errors, you can just bulk change and fix all of them in one go, and that might be really, really useful for your project. So how does it work? Essentially, one row equals one change to a field. So you can think about that as a row in the Gobo. So let's say you have a form which is an activity reporting form. Within that form, one of the questions is the number of participants, right? So you might want to change the total number of participants, and so one row would equal a change to that field, total number of participants. The template itself consists of just 4 columns, so it's a very simple template to understand. You have the case ID, that's the submission that you want to edit. The form ID is the form that the submission belongs to. So you might have multiple forms in your projects. Let's say you have activity reporting, you also have site monitoring, and you have some form of referrals. So the form ID, you might want to edit a activity report. So you'd use that for that section. The field name is which question or data field should be changed. And the new value is essentially what you want it to be changed to. So very, very simple. You don't need the old value. You just need what you want to put in as the new value. Okay, so let's look at an example of that. So at the top, you have a case ID. You'll see that the case IDs here are the same. So you want to change, you already know from this that you want to change 2 different fields within the same submission. The form ID is also the same, which would be the case if the case ID is the same as well. So under field name, you can see that you have one for demographics age and one for demographics gender. So the new value you want to put in age is you want to correct a submission and you want to change it to 16. So that can be quite simple because it's an integer field. You just put in 16. The next one is demographics gender. You want the new value to be M. And that's essentially because what's happened there is demographics gender will probably be a field or a question in COBOL, which will say, what is the gender of this participant, let's say. And you have an option of male or female. And you don't want to put the male or female would be the labels, and they're coded in COBOL as M for the names. So you want to put that M, which denotes to male. So as you can see in the bottom, then you'll have the new value appearing as in Xi 16, because that's just an integer field. And as you inputted M, that would appear as the label, which is man. Okay, so the field name, how to write that field name part correctly. So this is probably the most important part of the bulk edit and where we see the most errors. So important to put some time into this. You essentially need to give the value in the same format that the ODK COBOL software reads and stores the data in order for it to work. So the field reference should just be as the ODK conventions. If you have it with the group, essentially you're doing a group name / and then question name. If there's no group, as I said before, you'll just put the question name and you don't need a slash at all. Okay, so formatting, this can be a bit tricky, especially if you want to edit things like single select or multi-selects. So for multiple select, essentially you want to include choice names separated by spaces. So that can be important. Some people would naturally want to put commas. So if you have a select multiple, you want to change the select multiple to fruit 1 and fruit 2. You're just going to include both of those in the cell separated by a space. For select 1, you just use that exact choice name only. So just ensure again that you're using the choice name and not the choice label. If you misspell or there's a typo or a trailing space, then it also won't recognize what the name is and what to connect it to. Text fields can be inputted as any text. Calculate fields can be quite simple as well in that respect as well. And that's one of the tips that we're going to go on to in terms of best practices. So here's an example. You have the columns as in COBOL. So you have a type, you have a number of different type fields here. You have integer, text, select multiple, and select 1. And then you have the name, and then you have the label. So the label is what people will see when they're looking at the survey. The name is essentially what COBOL is reading and what Xi is reading in this case. So you have the age, what is their age, name, what's their name, fruits they like, and favorite fruit. So that would be the single select. So the next slide will go into how we might want to edit this. So we're looking now at the template. We're going to look at a number of different case IDs here. So we can see the top row is one case ID, and then the bottom 3 rows are a separate case ID. They're all from the same form, which is what you'd expect because these are the same questions that we looked at before. The first one is demographics age. That's the exact field name. And as you can see, the new value is an integer. That can be very easy. The next one is name. That one was a text field. And so the new value could be any text. That one is also quite simple and easier to get through without making mistakes. The next one is the multiple select question. So here we have fruit as the field name. So essentially, if you see something like that as a field name, you know that this doesn't exist within any group in COBOL. This is by itself. The demographics above the age exists in the group demographics. Since fruit is a multiple select, we're just going to put two multiple selects in the new value. And then favorite fruit is the final one. That one was a single select, so we're just going to put one value in. And that value will need to be the name and not the label of that COBOL will read. Okay, and this is just finally to illustrate, once we've added those new values, what will it appear as in Xi? And so you can see that the integer fields and text fields will appear exactly as you inputted them. The single select and multiple select fields will change based on their conversion from a name to a label. So a practical guide and approach. First, you're going to download the template. You're going to retrieve the case IDs of what you want to edit. You're also going to take the form ID from project settings and site forms. You are going to convert the field addresses and values. And for that, you might need to go into the COBOL form itself. You will then fill in the template. You'll upload the finalized template and you'll check for errors and also go into the actual submission and check that the edit has been made just on a few cases, just to ensure that everything's gone through correctly. Okay, so again, just to give one of the advices in terms of best practices, for these operations, it's really, really important to back up your data. Just create a folder where you have a copy of your data, usually by making a report or data set, and you have all of the existing prior data to the change. So the bulk edits update essentially the stored case data, so the metadata. So this will obviously affect data exports, reports, data sets, anything connected to Xi, and also what you see in the case overview. It's important to note that the original form submission view may not always reflect the edits when you open the form in edit mode. But in the overview on the Xi page, it will show the changes. So you'll need to just double check that after you've made the edit. So now we'll just go through an example of how you might edit case submissions using the template. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so the first step, I'm just going to go into project settings. I'm going to go into bulk upload and update, and I'm going to go into edit submissions. I'm going to take the template and I'm going to download that template over here. So here's the template as shown previously. There's just 4 very simple columns here to change. So let's say I will now go into my open another tab to go into the case that I want to edit. So let's just look into here. And I know I would like to change this community awareness session. So this is the case ID over here. And I'll just open up the form itself. So I'll go into take the case ID, and I will, first I'm going to download this file. I did a little easier to edit that way. Okay, so I want to change this case. I'm just going to paste that over here. Let's say I want to make 2 changes to this case. So the next is the form ID. Right now, I don't have the form ID. I'm going to go back into settings. I'm going to go into forms and site forms. So I know that this comes from the activity report form ID. So I'm just going to take this form ID over here. You'll have the form IDs of all of your forms over here. So here's the form ID. I'm also going to put that in. The next section is going to be the field name, as well as the, and then after that, the new value. So in order to find the field name, I don't want to just guess and say I want to change age or total population. I'm going to have to go in to the form that relates to this and see how the COBOL form is structured essentially. So for this, I might go here and I have all of the different forms over here. So this is the form that I want to update where the case ID exists. So this is 2707 activity report. So I'm going to go into this. So I just want to download. Let me just download this. Okay, so I'm going to edit two fields, let's say. First, I want to change the activity category. So we can see that this field is a select one, and it's based on the choices of category. So I'm going to go into this name first. This is the field that I want to change. So here I'm going to put activity category. Now, important to note that I can see that this doesn't exist within a group. So that's why it's easy for me just to copy and paste that one. So I want to see what I want to change it to. So I go into choices and let's say I want to change the category to site development. So I'm going to take the name and not the label. And I'm going to put that as the new value. So as simple as that, essentially. The next one, I'm going to change something that exists within the group participants. So that means I'm going to go into participants, I'm going to copy that part, and let's say I want to change the persons with disabilities. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to put participants, then I'm going to put slash, and I'm going to put PWD. So this is what I saw here. And for this, I'm going to put 200, let's say. I'm also going to do another one just to show how you might make a mistake. So let's say I do the wrong form of a slash and I put the slash the other way around. So I'm going to save this and I'm now going to go back. We want to now go back into bulk upload and update, and I'm going to go into edit submissions. Now, instead of getting the template, which is what we did before, we're now going to upload the template that we've created. So here we have this file and we're going to upload it. And as you can see, we have 2 items edited and 1 item failed. So let's go into the history section. And we can see that this one has been a partial success. So let's have a look at what went wrong for the one which didn't work. Okay, great. So as you can see here, we have all of the different, everything that we submitted already in our completed template. So these are all the same as exactly what I put. Then you have this additional column, which is labeled the upload summary. So here we have done. And for this one, which was the test field, you can see that it says something wrong with the field name. So it essentially doesn't recognize that field name because we put it in the wrong format. Okay, so now the final step, that now that we've checked the history, we've seen if it's been a success or a partial success, we're just going to go in and check the case ID directly. So we'll go into here, it's this case ID essentially, but let's just check for it one more time. We can search for case IDs over here. Okay, so this is the case that I wanted to change. I'm going to go into it over here. And we can see that the activity, the category of activity we changed into site development. And so that's been changed over there. We'll go into participants and we can see that the change to disability has been made over here to 200. This actually brings me to an important point, is that you do have to be careful that if you're editing one field, that might make your data incoherent with the rest of the fields. This total would have been a calculate field, and if you were inputting the form directly as an original form, you would have received a constraint message saying that you can't have more people with a disability than the total number of participants, right? When you do a bulk edit, you can obviously overwrite all of those features, so you do have to be careful that you it maintains logical consistency. So here you can see that the change is visible over here. If I do a data export, that change is also going to be visible in the data export. I'll just explain the point that I said. If you try and edit the form in some views, you won't see the change. So if we go here to the edit submission, which is how you might directly edit, you'll see that over here it still shows 2. And that's just because this shows the original entry made or changes made directly in this field. So just to flag that in case it confuses anyone. But you can see all of the changes made over here. You might not necessarily see the changes over here either. A case summary is sometimes made up of calculate fields. And essentially, you'll need to update those calculate fields directly in order to see those changes over there. But if that's confusing, don't worry about it. Just stick to the fact that it's very, very simple to bulk edit case data in the way that I just showed. Okay, great. So now let's move to the review section. So we spoke about the review panel in one of the previous lessons. So the bulk review allows you to change the following parts of a submission. You can change the case status. Those are the fields, if you remember, things like open, things like in progress, closed, flagged, and responded. You can also add comments. That's also part of the review panel. There's also often reasons. The reasons will often connect to the case status. So essentially, let's say you have a case which is closed or flagged, and the reason might be incomplete information. You also have a number of custom case information fields, so you can create those yourself. We've been through that in one of the previous lessons. And you can also remove tasks. Small warning here is that if you leave any columns blank, then the values will be overwritten as null. So it can be very important to ensure that you include data in at least the mandatory fields here. So the template is as follows. You have the following columns, the case ID. Again, this is the same. The review is connected to a case. So for every single change you want to make, there'll be a case ID that you want to connect it to. You need to change to, that's the next column. That will be to change the case status based on a number of numerical values. So I believe 1 is in progress, 2 might be responded. We'll come on to the exact fields in the next slide. Then the third column is going to be comment. You can add a comment to the case. That one is an optional one. A reason, you can also add a reason to the case. That's optional. And there'll be other fields, and these the template will essentially build based on the fields that you have in your custom case information. You can also close all related tasks, and that's an optional field to select whether you wish to close tasks related to the submission. So the numbers which align to the different statuses are as follows here. So open, if you want to change a case status to open, you'll put 0. If you want to change to in progress, it's 1. Then 2 for flagged, 3 for closed, and 4 for responded. So to change reasons, you need to input the exact value of the reason, and this is case sensitive. To close the tasks, you need to input yes in the closed task related column. And for comments, you can just add comments. You can write whatever you want over here. This doesn't delete or overwrite the previous comments through this feature. That essentially will show you a list of the previous comments. And this, if you add a comment here, it will just come up as the most recent comment. Okay, so let's say in an example, I want to change the status from closed to in progress. I want to add a comment signifying that the case requires further review from the program manager, and I want to change the reason to incomplete information. I also want to remove all associated tasks. So in that situation, what I'll do is I'll put in the case ID. I'll change to 1, which is the correct number for in progress. The comment might be something like can't review missing information. The reason will be incomplete information, and I want to close all of the related tasks related to that submission. So this is what I'll put in the template. So just some final points on the bulk review feature. The case ID and the change to, that's the status change field. Those are mandatory. If you want to add a comment, for example, but keep the same status, then you must input the same case status that is what it already is to keep it the same, as well as the new comment. And here we'll just do a short demonstration of how that might look like on Xi to do it in practice. Okay, let me just close these. So here we've gone back into the settings and bulk upload and update tab. So here, instead of going to edit submissions, I'm going to go to review submissions. I'm going to open the template and I'm going to download this template. So again, I'm going to download the file. Okay, so now we have the template. The next step was this one. Now we have the template. The next step is to look at what we actually want to change. So let's say we go back into this site over here. Okay, so we're into the site. And let's say we want to change this over here. We'll go into the case itself. So we have the case ID over here. So that will be the first thing to take for the template. This is the bulk review. So we want to change to in progress. So we'll put this as 1. The comment we might put to requires further review. The reason might be, let's say for this one, we can see the reasons over here, and we'll just put as no reason. Just check that that's the correct. Yeah, okay, so here, this is now a completed template. We'll save this and we'll go back into Xi and we will upload the completed template. So that's in the review submissions, and we'll upload the file right over here. Okay, so we see that it said that the bulk review submission has been successful. We can also view that in the history section, and we'll see that it essentially means that the status and those comments reasons should have been added. So we see that over here is a success on that submission. This essentially would have been the case. We'll just refresh. Might show here, might also take just a couple of seconds more, but we can see that this is the case ID that we wanted to change, and we can see that now the status has changed from closed to in progress. We can also see over here that we have the new reason is no reason, and if we go into the comments, we can see all of the changes made. So we can see that the person that was myself here marked the submission as in progress, the reason being no reason, and this is the latest comment that we have. So that's essentially how you would make changes for this side review panel. which can be really important for managing your case. Okay, so the final thing we're going to look at is the bulk operations of importing data. Importing data essentially means that we already looked at editing case data. Here, let's say you don't even have that case data in your project. You already collected data in a different project, let's say through Kobo. That would be a very common situation. You essentially want to import all of your Kobo cases into Zeit in one go, because you just want to keep your data in one place. So the import bulk operations is how you would do that. Can be really useful, like I just said, for migrating data, also useful for incorporating old or legacy data for record keeping, good just data governance basics, and can be useful for migrating data from one project into another project if you're working in multiple. Key requirements prior to submission. So the form must already be deployed to your project. You have to download the template specific to that form, and the template will match essentially a Kobo or ODK export. So the extra data fields so essentially the template will be exactly what the Kobo data export would look like for that form. There'll just be 2 additional columns, which will be the site ID, which essentially tells Zeit where am I storing this submission, and the form ID, so which form is it being assigned to. This actually updates automatically. So when you have a huge form, let's say you have a site monitoring form and you want to import lots of old site monitoring. So this can be a little tricky. It's very doable, but will take some time, and you just need to be careful with it. Once you have one row in the correct format, then it will be very easy to do all of them. So just to emphasize here, single select, you want to use the choice name and not the label. Multiple select, you use the choice name separated by spaces. The date, you want to use the correct format, and this is the format over here for date fields in Kobo. And just a tip here, which can be very useful for this process, is that when you're creating Kobo forms, you can use calculate fields to create essentially helper text fields. So this really helps with bulk import operations, and it also keeps the original question types intact. So that can be very simple. Essentially, you might have one field. Let's say it's age of participants. Then you might want to create a calculate field, which essentially just copies that over. And in that calculate field, you can edit, and the edit can be almost anything you want within a calculate field. So it's much easier to do bulk import and edit operations when you have calculate fields. What happens after a bulk import? So the bulk, an imported submission behaves exactly just like a regular submission. So if you have workflows applied to your form, so let's say you have a form where if a specific value is entered, or if email is triggered to someone else, that would be applied, and that same workflow would occur, and all other form settings will be applied to the imported data. So here I'm just going to show you what the form looks like. I'm not going to do a submission here because it will take too much time, but let's have a look at that now. So we'll go into the project. We'll go into settings and bulk upload and update. Here we're now looking at importing submissions. So we'll just have a look at the template. So the template for this one, it won't be one template, it will be different templates based on the different forms. So I have 4 forms here. So let's say I want to do the activity report. I'm just going to take this form, and it will give you the template for that form. And so this is what the template is going to look like. It's going to give you all of the different fields, and you can see we actually went through this one ourselves, and we'll just have the additional fields of the form ID and the site ID over here. And that's essentially how you'd fill that in. You'd input all of these columns or whichever columns that you want to be imported. And you'd download that template and then you'd upload it over here. And that's essentially how you would import submissions in bulk.